for the first time in the country, we have now started several undergraduate programs where students join by choice. In fact, many times I go there and try and dissuade them, saying that, this is not the job for you. The warehouse conditions are difficult, tough, etc. And despite that, they join. That shows that, with time, we'll have young students who are committed to join this sector and who will join the sector by choice. I think it's just a matter of time. It is, I agree, very late, but as I say, better late than never.
So I think in the best interest of time, we can begin. So very happy to see the fraternity join in and hope you're all keeping well. Thank you very much for taking the time out and joining in today. And welcome to the Blue Circle. It's such a big privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone, distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience that they bring in. And thank you to the distinguished audience who've joined us. We've received 100+ registrations, most of whom are CEOs, CXOs, and senior leaders, which is very encouraging and motivates us to provide high levels of dialogue to the online channels as well. For those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is an exclusive community and ecosystem which is curated for leaders across 6 sectors, which are logistics, energy, e-mobility, real estate, healthcare, and aerospace and defense. And very soon, I'm happy to share that we're introducing 14 new sector communities to our platform to form the Blue Circle 20. We also present socioeconomic insights, which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series and our digital publication. And in addition to this, I'm also happy to share that we very recently launched the first version of the Blue Circle app for leaders. It's somewhat like the sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space to have meaningful conversations, connect with like-minded people, house high-quality curated content, and provide access to business opportunities across our core sectors. For those leaders who are interested, please do join us. I will share the link to the app in the chat section, and we'll soon send out invitations post the webinars to our new guests. And today, as part of our Skilling India series, we're privileged to have big minds and leading thinkers of the industry join in for our logistics communities discussion. The topic is fighting the challenge of skilling in this unorganized sector. In the best interest of time, I will just briefly mention the names and designations of the leaders we have here. We have with us Captain T.S. Ramanujam, Chief Executive Officer, Logistics Sector Skill Council, Mr. Dilip Chenoy, Secretary General, FICCI, Mr. Sanjay Tiwari, co-founder and CEO, 21cc Education, and the chair and moderator for this session is Mr. Abhishek Bhutani, Managing Director, Logistics and Industrial, Cushman and Wakefield. Thank you very much, sirs, once again for joining in. It's an absolute pleasure. And I now request Mr. Bhutani to please chair and moderate the session.
Thank you, Siddharth. A very good evening to my fellow panelists and everybody who's attending this. Thanks for giving an opportunity to be amongst this esteemed panelist session. I really hope that the discussion that we do is enlightening for everybody who's on the panel and listening to us. Going across, as Siddharth has already done an introduction and helped me with the introduction of my panelists, we get down to the straightaway discussion points that we have today for the session. Just to set the context, before we deep dive, the topic is fighting the challenges of skilling in this unorganized sector. Today, logistics sector is very much spoken about. It is the backbone for every business, backbone for the economy. Especially in the pandemic times, we have heard logistics sector coming in from the government side as well. Be it with respect to the essential commodities being made available to the consumer, be it with respect to the vaccine that is getting available, that is made available in every nook and corner of the country. So it is gained special focus. But at the same time, question goes that whether the right skill sets are being given to the aspirants who are getting into this particular sector. Is that something that's already on the way? Is that something that's under discussion, or is that still we are far behind from it? We as an economy India, we know the potential, we know the population that we have, the geography that we control. Some of our nations, Western friends, countries like US and all, they are so big demographically and have lesser population than us, but still they command a lesser logistics cost as compared to a country like India, which is smaller in demography, but has a huge population. So that efficiencies can always be built up, but we have a cost which is very, very high. To some of the stats that I have, the cost of logistics spend in the developed nation is a single digit number as a part of the GDP, whereas we are approximately 50% higher than them. So there's a lot of thirst, there's a lot of need for it, that yes, we bring right talent, right skill sets, right knowledge to this particular sector, so that we aim, we get, and we aspire whatever we want to. So straight away, taking cues from there, coming to my fellow panelists, today the question is, Captain, if I may start with you. Today, we logistics sector employs huge number of people who are dependent upon for their career, livelihood on this particular sector. But what do you feel? I mean, what is your feeling that they are getting into this sector as an aspiration to get into it, or they are just getting it as by chance into this particular sector? What has been your experience, and what are you seeing around you?
Very good question. I think all of us logisticians in the panel have all joined the sector by default and not by choice. In fact, that has been the story of almost all entire logistics workforce. And this is what, including our esteemed chairman, Mr. Dinesh, also keeps saying, that we should make this sector as something where people come in by choice and not by default. Now, having said that, for the first time in the country, we have now started several undergraduate programs where students join by choice. In fact, many times I go there and try and dissuade them, saying that, this is not the job for you. The warehouse conditions are difficult, tough, etc. And despite that, they join. That shows that, with time, we'll have young students who are committed to join this sector and who will join the sector by choice. I think it's just a matter of time. It is, I agree, very late, but as I say, better late than never.
Thank you, Captain. Coming over to you, Sanjay, you are a co-founder for 21cc Education, which is particularly focusing on this particular sector, imparting knowledge, imparting education. What is your take on this particular point?
Yeah, thanks for that, Abhishek. Before I answer that question, one exception, maybe I'm the one exception to Captain Ramanujam's rule, because I actually opted to get into the logistics industry many years ago. I was actually a steel trader for a Dutch company. I was living and working in Malaysia, buying, selling steel. And I discovered the fact that logistics actually mattered more than the buying and selling. And if you can get the buying and selling right, but if you don't get the delivery right, you don't have a good product. So I actually applied to KLM and they offered me the choice of going to their passenger division or the cargo division, and I opted for cargo. So it was very much a conscious choice, and I wasn't under the influence of any substances at the time. I'm still very happy with that. So maybe I'm the one exception to Captain's rule, but I agree with him that I hope we have many, many more such exceptions. I think we as a company have also been very actively trying to promote logistics education to youngsters at colleges across India. And indeed, the unknowability factor of logistics is huge as an industry. But even between 2020 and 2021, we are seeing a big shift that people are becoming more aware, because like you said in your opening remarks, and Captain also just said, people are recognizing the fact that logistics plays such an important role, and it truly is the backbone of the economy. And I think the pandemic has actually brought that out better than ever before. We've got the Prime Minister talking about India's place in global supply chains, etc. That was not the kind of language that one ever heard. And my conviction and pitch to young people coming into the workforce is, this industry has the power to do to India what BPO and IT did 25 to 30 years ago, and then some. If you look at the quantum of money being deployed and invested in India and earmarked for India by private equity players, by venture capitalists, and by the government of India. These three in the field of logistics and infrastructure. And I don't need to tell you this because you are an infrastructure man first and foremost. It is really a stupendous amount. So I think it's a wonderful time for young people to actually make a career in this industry. And when I pitch to young people, I say, you're extremely fortunate to be coming into the workforce at this particular point in time, because honestly speaking, you will be riding a wave for the next 30 to 40 years in this industry.
Thank you, Sanjay. That was really insightful. Mr. Chenoy, I'll take a liberty to come to you. You presently with FICCI, but before that, you were Managing Director and CEO with the National Skill Development Corporation as well. And logistics per se is requiring a huge skill set that's needed in the industry right now to bring in the level of efficiencies that we need. Your take on that, sir?
No, so I think if you look at what Captain Ramanujam said and what Sanjay said, so let's actually let's step back and see what was the scenario till a few years ago, right? The challenge was that so nobody knew what were the type of different jobs that were in different sectors, right? So, I mean, I'm sure when everyone grew up, right, and you were in school, the first choice you had, what do you want to take? You want to take, science, biology, or, arts, right? So you were left, and once you made that choice, then what you did further was very dependent on that. You could switch from science to arts, right? At some time ago, but not, these days you can't, because you got to get an impossible 105 or 110% to get into from a science stream to get into humanities course in some of the colleges in Delhi University, but that's a separate issue. So your kind of thing was made up, and then you either became an engineer, a doctor, or a chartered accountant, and everything else was kind of incidental, right? Some people like Sanjay were exposed to, let's say, different areas such as logistics, but you actually nobody was you actually chose your career by default, and after failing at attempts and what you or your parents wished that you could do, some succeeded, some became engineers, some became doctors, some became chartered accountants, some joined the civil service, and then the rest of the thing was there. So the actual thing was that there was no availability or no knowledge about the type and varieties of jobs that were available. The second challenge was that even if you are aware, right, most institutions did not even have courses to train you for other than school. In school, if you wanted to do anything other than arts, science, commerce, and you could not even get into that, right? Similarly, in colleges, there was actually no you had the BA, BCom, BSc, etc. Only then a few College of Vocational Studies came in, but they only featured very particular things in travel and tourism and accountancy, etc. And that. So I think the challenge was that there was no ecosystem that actually showed what jobs are available, what are the types of career progressions in different places, and if you got into a particular job, right, then there was no way that you could learn off the job, because your job was 9 to 5 and most institutes were 9 to 5. So the challenge here was, how do you identify, one, what are the jobs? Two, how do you identify what are the curriculums and courses that are required for you to actually benefit and qualify to the job? And third, how do you map career progression and provide 24/7, 365 days or 366 days in a leap year lifelong learning? So those were the actual challenges that were there that you had to actually overcome. Because even if you looked at the ITI system, you had turner, fitter, electrician, carpenter, accounting for over 75 to 80% of their output, right? Most engineering colleges, you did mechanical, electrical, other things like that. And, and in college, you just did, so till about 10 years ago, till about 2010 and early, let's say 2008, 2009, and more so after 2012, this whole thing was actually left to a few private sector institutions to actually do, but there was no formal education. And therefore the corporate sector and the employers did not even know how to even recruit people. So, that was the challenge as you look at it, at that point of time. And therefore, if you trespassed into a logistics company, you got recruited, right? So that's what actually happened, and it was a job, right? So I think that's the background which I want to give, and I'll talk about more later.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoy. Thank you. Taking a cue from you, probably getting back to Captain Ramanujam again. Sir, I see under the Skills Council, that was Logistics Sector Skill Council, you have created subsectors of logistics and primarily 11 headings out of it. Can you help us understand the rationale behind these 11 and what we are trying to cover from a skill set perspective under this 11th thing? We all know logistics is a huge ecosystem. Probably if we start defining the subsectors of it, we all will have different definitions of it. But yes, representation from the government side and division into 11 subsectors. Interesting to know will be your thoughts, sir.
Thank you. I'll just take off from where Mr. Dilip Chenoy left. Very rightly, he summed up that we never had the job roles, we never had the standards, we didn't have the curriculum, we didn't have the content. So, in the absence of all that, everybody went through a 5-day familiarization program and got onto the job. That was how it all was. When the council came into being in 2015, we first started scoping the sector. When I say scoping the sector, we said that anything to do with storage, distribution, and transportation across all three modes, air, sea, road, rail, would come within the purview of the logistics sector. And thus, we scoped it into 12 subsectors, which is now ratified by the logistics division, the Ministry of Commerce, which is our line ministry. And these 12 subsectors are warehousing, which includes your packaging, land transportation, then your cold chain solutions, courier and express, e-commerce operations, port terminals, ICDs and container freight stations, air cargo terminals and air freight stations, exempt freight forwarding and customs, inland waterways, marine services and shipping, rail logistics, liquid logistics, and supply stroke distribution chain in support of agriculture, that is the primary sector, in the sense the post-harvest agri supply chain, and in support of manufacturing, which is your inbound, in-plant, and outbound logistics. So these were the total 12 subsectors where logistics activity is prevalent, and this is how we have scoped it. Thereafter, we created the job roles, and this is now also a kind of an accepted norm by the National Skill Development Corporation, of what are called rationalized job roles. When I say rationalized job roles, these are job roles which permit multitasking, which in fact is becoming more the norm than an exception. And therefore, this also permits for vertical and horizontal mobility, which, as Mr. Dilip Chenoy brought out, what is the career progression? Yes, now this is possible. You could hop from one subsector to another subsector. For example, you join as a consignment booking clerk in a warehouse with a 10th class pass, and thereafter you could grow with some experience and hop across into the courier sector as a consignment tracking executive, where the minimum qualification is 12th class. So you have gained those 2 years by vocational experience, and then joined a job role where the minimum qualification is 12th class, where you are actually 10th class. So this kind of a progression also we have kind of developed using these rationalized job roles. And now we have, for all this, we have developed the curriculum which is for what is called the QP, the qualification pack, and the content as well has been created. So in effect, we have kind of standardized this entire skill ecosystem in this logistics sector. Over to you, Mr. Abhishek.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I did not realize I was mute. Mr. Chenoy, if I can come back to you, like Captain explained, the rationale behind creating 12 subsectors and then, creating rationalized job roles. If I were if I can put across this question in a way that from a person perspective, it is like three buckets probably, where you see your jobs coming in. One is purely for the livelihood, which you need, for a day-to-day basis. Second is you want to see it as a career, which is probably the next level, and where some kind of upskilling is also required from basic knowledge being imparted for the livelihood. And third is to finally turn it into a professional. You start for your livelihood, then you make it a career, and then probably you end up being a professional over there, where you're not just doing your job, but you're contributing to the sector as well. So what Captain said about the rationale behind these 12 subsectors and how it is being designed, what do you think is essential for for them to think about for further creating more interest for the aspirants to come into this sector, so that it is not only seen as a livelihood sector, it is seen probably a sector where you can make your career and probably turn into a professional courses or maybe turn a professional tomorrow. Over to you, Mr. Chenoy.
Yeah, so let's take this great question and look at it from different different professions, right? And let me take a chartered accountant as again, no university gives you a chartered accountant's degree. It is the Institute of Chartered Accountants and Assembly for Institute of Cost and Works Accountants, etc. Right? Now, when you might be doing a graduate course, right? Earlier, you could do a graduate course in parallel, and with a CA exam, etc., etc. And you have 2 stages of exams and your multiple papers, etc. And after the first stage, if you cleared it, you become an article clerk and you article, in with an accounting firm. And then, if you clear the second, you actually then have this thing. So if I were to say that the first exam that you clear actually gives you a foothold into the profession, right? And then you actually then become a professional. So as long as you are attempting to pass the first exam, right? You do some accounting and something just to earn your livelihood, right? Just to earn your livelihood. And then once you become an article clerk, you become a semi-professional, but you're not a professional. You can't do audits. You can't do something, and then once you get a full chartered accountant's degree, chartered accountant certificate, right? Then you can, do audits. You can then grow in the firm, etc., etc., etc. So I'll take the logistics scenario as well and take any one of those 12 verticals. When you're working in that vertical by accident or by design, right? Even when Sanjay worked in that thing, he could not have got a certificate from India. If he ever got a certificate or some kind of academic qualification, it may be through the KLM route that he talked about or some other route, but there was no certification process in India. So if there is no certification process in India, no matter how much you work there, you are saying, okay, you are in the unorganized sector or organized sector, depending upon whether you get PF or provident fund, the pension, etc., etc. Your unorganized or organized sector is determined by the type of salary and pay package you get, not by the type of professional degree and qualification that you have. So I think the first thing that this whole the Logistics Sector Skill Council under the visionary leadership of Mr. Dinesh and then led by Captain has done is actually looked at, okay, these are the different job roles and in which you can start at level 1 and go up to level 10 or whatever it is in that. And okay, if you want to go from this vertical to the next vertical, because you have a very interesting grid behind you, right? So if I take the grids behind you, because everybody can see you on screen, right? These are actually vertical grids and boxes. Now, in the education system, it's very difficult to go from one box to the left box or to the right box. But with the qualification packs, right, you can go across the grid anywhere by adding on a qualification, right? And therefore, this is a professional grid behind you and not just an education grid. The education grid differs from the professional grid. Unorganized and organized is kind of varied due to the salary and pay package that you get. So now if I were to join as a loader and unloader, right? In some states, there are unions for a loader and unloader. That's the first step, And if you want to become a driver, it's absolutely impossible. If you want to become the supervisor and, supervise other loaders and unloaders, there is no way to recognize it. Now you have a certification that could be done, and the certification actually gives you that opportunity to progress in your career and become a professional. Abroad, it was possible to do this. You could, leave education, you could do skill programs, earn different certificates, right? And then, get back into the education system and then do your PhD or even come back into the thing. It was not possible in India because the system did not exist. So, I mean, the question again, just to put it in perspective, is how do you qualify as professionals and how do you make them professionals, right? In this, a profession is when you are actually, you got a career path there, it is recognized as advancement path, and there are separate, different stepping stones and different certification programs or degree programs, or even, your own company recognition programs by which you grow in the profession, and that certificate also is recognized by other institutions. So you can, if you want to shift from one institution to the other or from one sector to the other, you can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chenoy.
So can I come in with an example? So just from our own.
Yeah, please.
Yes. Since we are doing the training for liquid medical oxygen drivers, I'll take that particular example. When you say livelihood, it would mean a driver who has a HMV license. He may be able to drive any kind of some kind of a vehicle. Now, you've seen most of the metros now work on, the water tankers coming and giving the water to various places. Now that requires a very specialized kind of working, because the water keeps sloshing around inside, though there are bulkheads within the tank. So that's a water tanker driver. He gets a little better paid because by virtue of the number of trips he does and so on and so forth, he gets a little better paid. So typically, if an HMV driver gets, say, somewhere between 15 to 18,000, the water tanker driver gets somewhere between 23,000 to 24,000. And now he comes to the liquid medical oxygen, where it's a totally different animal, because this is like a thermos flask, and where there is no compartment, and the whole liquid oxygen minus 273 degrees cryogenic oxygen flows up and down, if you accelerate or decelerate very fast. So you need to be very specially trained, and you also need to how to know the decanting of the liquid. So once he does that, that's a professional course. And after which he gets somewhere in the tune of 35,000 rupees. And now we are doing this. So you see, this progression is there. Unfortunately, as Mr. Chenoy brought out, all this in India has not been done. Now, for example, a special training for an ambulance driver, it's never done. He learns on the job again. So, but then once he is given such a training and a certification, obviously he will earn a premium on the job that he does.
Very well noted, and a very relevant example, Captain. Sanjay, if I may come to you, you are the one who is designing the curriculums. You are, trying to bring in the education and trying to, impart education, probably, if I may say, to the aspirants in the sector. And you've done it already successfully. You are in the process of doing it. So how are you forming these subsectors and, bringing that and turning that into a curriculum, and then, making the knowledge worthwhile to be imparted? What's the thought process behind that curriculum, if I may ask you?
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek, for that. And I think the relevance of your question lies in the fact that Mr. Chenoy and Captain Ramanujam have been speaking about one end of the spectrum so far, which is a very important part, which is how do we set up recognizable supply chain training, across, and supply chain and logistics education across various sectors, subsectors. How do we create a whole career path for people? Super important. So how do we get a college kid to somewhere opt to say, hey, I would like to go into logistics, etc. The other end of the spectrum, and the reason why you in your opening remarks very flatteringly, I don't know whether it was you or Siddharth, called us the unorganized sector, and it still hurts when people say that, is because of what the manner in which we hire the large numbers of entry-level people that have to work in the sector. That's where the stigma or the label comes from. It doesn't have to do with how we transport things. It doesn't have to do with how the vessel berths or the aircraft takes off or how the warehouse is run, but it has to do with how we recruit people, large numbers of people without, any kind of a formal education, and it's okay. And that's the sector that my company, 21cc Education, is very much involved in helping employers to onboard these people and educate them in some shape or form, and even pre-onboard them and say, can somebody even a few hours before they join a company, that's how bad it is today, know the basics about picking, packing, and what it is that they're going to do. And even in that domain, and those of you on the call and listeners will actually even recognize it, even in that domain, people would say, well, you know, I don't think the guy has an hour to spend on this kind of training. Uske paas ek ghanta nahi hai. And we are willing to let somebody walk in the door, not give us even 1 hour of his time to get trained on a mobile device, and then start picking up boxes and probably literally throwing them around. That's where the unorganized label comes from. And that's a cost to everyone. It's a cost to the company, it's cost to the economy, it's cost to the customer. You get the wrong package, or your package goes missing. And it's eventually also cost to that person, except he doesn't realize it. He just hops from low-paying job to low-paying job. The CHRO of Schenker, here in India, she very tellingly a few months ago said, we need to stop thinking of these people at the bottom of the trough and that they're unimportant, because they are your future regularized warehouse employees and your team leaders and your supervisors. Start viewing them as, you know, the pipeline, if you like, to this. So start looking out for them, and consider it unacceptable that somebody comes in without any kind of formal education. In a hospital, we don't. Right? In a call center, we don't. And yet in a warehouse, we say somewhere it's okay. That's where the label comes from. And that's where we are trying to make a difference through, for example, very gamified training, if I can just share my screen. But because of the audience, and because some of them or many of them have had unsuccessful educational careers so far, you're a 10th pass or a 10th dropout or something, can we give you an environment in which you can actually tap on something and say, oh, this is a warehouse. I wonder what happens inside of a warehouse. And can we offer you contextual learning? So learning that is specific to the context in which you're operating, and make it simple. And don't give somebody a book to begin with. Don't give somebody a long list of things. So kind of gradually handhold them and nudge them into learning and give them a positive association. So using gamification, animation, etc., we're trying to address the needs of this particular audience by working very closely with companies and not skipping over the details. So the companies are saying, this is what that guy needs to know. This is my bare minimum, and this is what we need to do. So that's, I hope that very long answer in some shape or form answers your question, Abhishek, but that's the space in which we're operating. In fact, much less in the still quite organized domain where Captain Ramanujam and the LSC operate, which is already looking at college graduates and people going for internships, etc.
Sanjay, I pick up a very relevant point. From a business perspective, we always say, what is the pipeline? What is the pipeline? In the logistics sector, from a HR perspective, anybody who's entering new into the ecosystem today is the pipeline. And that's equally critical for the business tomorrow to serve and sustain and grow. So very relevant point from you, and a very relevant correlation to the business as well. I'm sure a lot of viewers with us will appreciate that point. Captain, if I may come back to you, like Sanjay explained what they are trying to do right from a basic level, what's happening in a warehouse, what's happening in an air cargo field. From the Skill Council perspective, what is the intent and the plan is there a plan or intent to make this part of the curriculum in the schools, in the colleges? What levels, because unless we start doing it, people who get to know about these kind of courses that Sanjay is running, some of them will be able to pick it up, but people will not really have a choice. It's like something, if I am an aspirant, I come across what Sanjay is imparting with, I get, attached to it, and I make my career into it. But from my education days, if I start to know about getting what is logistics, probably it can be one of the streams that I may decide as a student early in my career. So what's your intent? What's the plan from the council perspective?
A very good question, actually. In the sense, when we started the short-term training, we realized that this sector has a substantial amount of knowledge component. After all, the entire aim of the skill ecosystem is to ensure that the candidate it's an outcome-based training where the candidate has the required knowledge, skills, and attitude to be job ready. So we found that in the logistics sector, there's a substantial amount of knowledge component as well. So therefore, when we created these job roles, we found that it is better that we get into the educational system too. And that's how we created what is called from the school onwards, an awareness program called the Logistics Literacy Program, which was basically an interactive gaming on inventory management for kids, so that they know, if I have carry this kind of an inventory, if the Kirana store is say farther away, how much should I have? If it is closer, how much should I have? These kind of interactive kind of games that we played with schools. It was all for children below poverty line, the parents, and it went off very well. And now we're running it in over 70 schools through a World Bank funded program. But we will now be taking it up in the class 11 and 12 too, as in a formal manner, which will be the warehouse inventory transportation training. So that at the end of it, the candidate would be either can be apprenticed, or he'll be given a preference to take up further studies in the undergraduate program. We launched 7 undergraduate programs in colleges, which is in agri storage and supply chain, air cargo and aviation services, e-commerce operations, XM and express, maritime logistics, and land transportation, which includes road and rail. And then we have launched also a logistics diploma in logistics technology. That is on the maintenance aspects of material handling equipment, conveyors, and so on and so forth. We have launched 2 ITI trades, warehouse technician and the in-plant logistics technician. Incidentally, Flipkart needs 5,000 such warehouse technicians over the next 2 years. We've signed an MOU. Now the training is going to start this year. Similarly, for the in-plant logistics technician, TVS Supply Chain Solutions needs another 1,500, and that has now again been started in ITIs. Thereafter, we said that what should be the career progression post the undergraduation. So we created a MS Data Science in Logistics and Supply Chain. Incidentally, this is the first time MS by research, and it's being launched by the Devi Ahilyabai Vishwavidyalaya in Indore. And today we had the very happy news of Central University Hyderabad also agreeing to launch this particular program. And so therefore, we have created a complete kind of addressed the complete pathway for future supply chain professionals as to how they can take up educational, vocational training in logistics, and thus be prepared for the job roles that they are going to assume. Why I say this is all these educational programs are closely linked with the qualification pack or the job role. There is an inbuilt apprenticeship in every program. For the first time in the country, we have launched an apprenticeship embedded undergraduate program, which now has become a policy in NEP, National Education Policy 2020. We launched this program in 2019. This has now become a policy in 2020. And all these programs have apprenticeship embedded in them. In fact, as I speak, 750 students have been successfully apprenticed in various companies where they are dirtying their hands to learn the job. And this will ensure that they become absolutely job ready, know what are the problem areas and how to fix them.
Thank you, Captain. Mr. Chenoy, if I can come back to you, we all realize, and we all on the same page probably, that yes, the sector needs a lot of attention in terms of the knowledge imparting at every level. But today, if I put it across, the world is turning digital, and with so many people employed, so much of cargo being handled in logistics under various formats, I'm sure there's a lot of data accumulation happening in. Where do you see India standing today in terms of using that data, probably artificial intelligence, effectively? If not, then probably how far we are and what we really need to do, because on the IT side, we are the strongest in the world. But this logistics sector, which is generating so much of data every day, how can we put it to good use?
Thanks, Abhishek, for that. And there are 2 aspects to it. One is, you have data. How do you use the data to improve the efficiency and the kind of outcome of your operations, right? Okay, and then serve your customer better, identify who are your customers, what are their preferred modes, what are the types of goods that is supplied to, where did they ship to, what did they do, etc., kind of a thing. So that is really data being used for customer relationship management and understanding businesses, and then creating efficiencies, understanding how you could get a higher rate of interest, higher rate of return on your investments, and all of that. So that's an efficiency kind of a parameter, and therefore you need skilled people who can take that data. First of all, you need to have all the data digitally. So if if you're doing handwritten receipts, and therefore one of the biggest and best things to have happened was the e-way bill, right? And I think for those companies who have not yet even voluntarily gone to the e-way bill because they're less than the threshold, it'll be a great opportunity and for them to actually try and voluntarily enroll with the e-way bill, because it'll give them data and things which they never had access to before and never understood before. The second thing is that how do you use this data, right, for prediction, for looking at what percentage of a certain market share that you have, who are the other people that you want to do, who are the people in the region, in the vicinity of the people that they are, how can you collaborate? I mean, a lot of the startups, are actually using this data to create new businesses, delivery, for example, or, or there are startups who actually do, who amalgamate and, consignments, right? And they get full truckloads and full container loads and all going forward. So if a company does not do this bit themselves, there will be some young guy, or even maybe Sanjay or somebody else, or Captain Ramanujam, anybody who has an idea and uses data to disrupt their business, and would would take away a lot of market share or take away business from them, and you would be left kind of wondering what happened, right? So I think the way you use data and the way you look at it, you accumulate data and you analyze data, one, to increase your business, and second, to look at how you can become more efficient, and how can you look at it in the future. For example, one company has been noticing that a lot of their people are of a particular age group, right? And then you use the demographic data to see where the concentration of that age group is there, and you then plot and in which of the markets you are there and which markets you're not there. So then you open offices or open facilities in the same demographic area where you are not there. So I'm just taking the age group as a profile. You can take Captain Ramanujam has done a lot on oxygen, right? Oxygen is produced in one place and is needed in another place, right? And then and similarly coal. You can take anything, how you use data to improve efficiency, and then you actually can track the efficiency of people through data. Courier companies use OTPs and everything, not only to ensure that you get the package, but to track delivery times, to track the route efficiency, to track everything, right? So there are multiple ways you can use data in a logistics company, but the fundamental thing is that the people that you employ must know how to actually feed in data, or you create systems that have automatically data fed in. Then you need to have people who can take that data that is fed in and analyze it. And then you need people who take that analysis and decide on business plans. So everybody in the organization going forward will need to be technology savvy.
Thank you.
Just to add to what Mr. Chenoy said, in fact, companies such as Delivery, Ecom Express, etc., who are into the last mile delivery, have a separate department of data scientists. They take, in fact, 40 for data science and 40 for data analysts who do the forecasting. So, in fact, most e-commerce companies now have a separate department for managing data.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chenoy and Captain. Sanjay, coming back to you, Captain was mentioning that, World Bank is trying to fund some of the initiatives that they are running. It's equally important for us, we can have a lot of initiatives being discussed, designed, but if we don't have a good sponsor who not only, supports the initiative with financial aspect, but with the right intent as well. Until unless you don't have a good sponsor, the initiative goes for a toss. But yes, in this particular field, with so much of desire and need to have the right education being imparted, what do you think? Who could be the right sponsors for this vertical to start with? And especially when you are driving this initiative at 21cc, how are you finding it out? And what do you think our prospective sponsors could be in the future and in the times to come?
Yeah, with Captain in his current incarnation and Mr. Chenoy in his previous incarnation on the call, it's a very dangerous question, because obviously they have at various times been, they don't just seek funding, but they've also been dispensers of funding. And I think honestly, there is a lot of capital that needs to be deployed. We've raised private money, to fund. So a lot of the content that we create is either paid for by customers, or we have spent from our own pocket from money that we have raised. But there is only so much that you can do, because it's a factor of capital and time and people, these 2 or 3 things, because it's a knowledge intensive business. So we figured out how to create content and how to gamify it and bring the technology to it. But yes, I think having sponsors, be it FIs or even real estate companies, and real estate players are getting into this, or foundations, etc., and say we are willing to fund the development of content and then let somebody go and further fine-tune it and sell it, is, I think, something that is highly desirable. I'll be very frank about that, because if you look at the scope of the scale of the challenge in front of us, it's so huge. And I think we also tend to be very critical of what happens and has happened in India. But when I pitch to clients in the Netherlands and the US, Dubai, I actually say that in the sector skill councils and in the qualification packs, India has something that's unique and unparalleled in any other country. The NSDC at last count has 2,300 qualification packs. I think it's a massive, it's a 14 megabyte Excel sheet with all of their qualification packs. And Captain, I think around 92 of them are yours, right, from the LSE. So that's sort of the backbone. But then creating further learning around those and gamifying it and make it into something that's bite-sized, because a qualification pack is still a 25, 26-page document. But converting that into something that can be consumed on a mobile or a tablet takes money. And it's not an infinite amount of money, but it's a decent amount of money. So that's certainly the journey that we are embarked on. And then we are just looking at a couple of subsectors in what is already a very large industry. And you can extrapolate the same to healthcare and BFSI and hospitality. These are 3, 4, 5 of the really big employers in our country or in any mature economy.
Thank you, Sanjay. Probably, I think keeping the time in mind, I'm asking you probably the last question that, we've discussed so much about right education in the right module at the right place for the people to be offered. What do you think we can achieve out of it, from what we are right now? Today, we are managing logistics well. It's not that we are not managing it well, but then yes, with the present level that we are managing it at, versus, going to what we can achieve, what do you think we can, with this journey of education, probably these initiatives can bring this to this particular sector?
You're asking the question to me or to?
Yeah, probably, yes, the closing remarks. I'll be running across other panelists as well.
Sure. Well, I certainly think that the headcount, we are inefficient in the headcount, and I know something about logistics, but our typical Indian warehouse employs way too many people compared to per square foot, right? Compared to an equivalent warehouse in Northern Europe or the United States, right? Or North America. So I think skill development, etc., will hopefully do multiple things. Of course, help people move up the ladder, but also help us be more selective in whom we employ, rather than throwing bodies at a problem, which has traditionally been our approach. And in a country of 1.3 billion people, most employers will tell you today they're struggling to get the right kind of people. for the jobs that they need, right? So it's not that we have an infinite supply of labor and just throw 200 people, because actually when you throw 200 people at a warehouse that should only be employing 150, 50 of them are actually disrupting the work of those other 150 who could be good employees. So one of the things I think people will hopefully move up, get skilled and earn better, provide better for the families. But I also think businesses will be able to make do with less people, but smarter or better trained people.
Thank you. Mr. Chenoy, coming to you for the closing remarks, all these initiatives, sponsorships, what it can bring to the logistics sector from where we are today to what we can be.
I think just 3 quick points. The first is the logistics sector is hugely dependent on human interface, right? You can mechanize things. People have mechanized palletization, people have mechanized loading, unloading, etc. That's one, but human interface and is an important part of the logistics sector. Therefore, the better your people are equipped to handle various situations and the better your people are trained, right? The more efficient and more profitable your company would be. And really, a logistics company doesn't have to do anything. You don't have to spend a rupee or naya paisa on that if you just do one thing. I'm sure when you recruit a manager, you insist that the person has got a degree and he's got something like that. You're looking for that. If you just say that, okay, get your HR person or recruiting person to get in touch with Captain Ramanujam, look at the various job roles and qualifications that he has, and specify that if you want to join, let's say you want to join Cushman and Wakefield Logistics Division as something, you need to have a level 6 certificate in this vertical from Captain Ramanujam. If all logistics companies and every company just does this one thing, you will lead a movement and be the front runner, ensuring that you don't get into the sector by accident, but everybody actually who gets in here is educated, is skilled and certified and is proficient, right? And the second thing as part of that is periodically allow that person to go back to maybe Sanjay Tiwari's institute, right? And add on a degree or add on another certificate or add on something so that he can move up or diagonally or across in the organization, right? If you recognize a certificate and allow them that mobility, I don't think Captain Ramanujam or Sanjay Tiwari or anybody else wants any other help from this sector. That's all. You don't pay the guy to go and become a graduate or become an engineer. You just specify. So say, if you want to join me in the logistics field, right? You better get a certificate and have a certificate from Captain Ramanujam. You can jointly assess the guys with them. There's a huge opportunity there. So this is a simple one-line message. And then, your Blue Circle and Captain Ramanujam could actually recognize logistics companies who have hired the most number of certified people every year, right? And you celebrate it. That's all. That will create a pull instead of pushing people into this industry.
Thank you so much. Captain, last coming to you. You are driving such an important initiative. You are probably the brain behind all this stuff. What's your aspiration out of this particular whole scheme and probably the initiatives that you're driving?
Possibly mine will be a little anecdotal, but it sums up everything. The apprentices, there used to be 2 lakh apprentices in a year across all the sectors. Now, logistics alone now has 23,000 apprentices. So you can see the kind of, it's almost, in one year, we are producing almost 10% of what was being produced by everybody. So that the scale is scaling up. A candidate after 1 month became the best employer of the year in Big Basket. We never knew about it. He quietly sheepishly showed me the certificate, and that was an achievement. I mean, in 1 month, the person becoming the best employer in his company. That's what I meant by the commitment that he shows, because he is joining by choice. Another candidate joined as a warehouse packer. Now he's been given the job of warehouse supervisor by Mahindra Logistics. And that is exactly in 3 months flat. So it shows again that candidates who join by choice will definitely prove themselves. A company like FedEx, where we did a recognition of prior learning, are now paying for doing this same recognition of prior learning. And so is DHL. So it's all happening. I know it is very small. I wish the council had been born for 25 years earlier, but then, as I say, I mean, it's never too late to start. I think we will, with our kind of the effort, the sustained effort that we are putting in the next 10 years, I think it's going to be the decade of logistics, and we'll definitely be somewhere up there by the end of 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you. With this, I would like to probably bring an end to the discussion that we are having so far, and quickly jump onto some of the questions that our viewers have put it across. Captain, again, sorry, allow me to come back to you because the first question is relevant. This has come from Gurvinder Singh, who's General Manager at CBRE. The question is, what kind of certifications are required in supply chain management today, and what is in demand? Are there any certifications required?
In fact, the logistics division itself was trying to create a certified logistics professional. The previous special secretary was on the job, and in fact, we have already created the curriculum. I think going forward, we would have that created. I think there will be there's a CLP will be a basic, intermediate, and advanced, and all employees and companies would need to take up the certificate. This will become the certificate which is valid across the country.
Thank you. Mr. Chenoy, if I can come to you for the second question. There is a question from Shashi K. Reddy. He's a Group Managing Director at Arluja Logistics Private Limited. The question is, how do you see adoption of supply chain automation in India? What challenge and opportunities do you see for startups venturing into logistics business?
So I think there are two very different questions. The first is use of automation and other technologies in logistics in India. I think there are many companies who are ahead of the curve. Some of them are international companies who are bringing international best practices into India, which not necessarily may be cost effective, but because they want to harmonize operations around the world and do things like that, they're using those automation technologies or other technologies, whether robotic technologies or palletization or other things. Then there is a whole other set of digital technologies, simple things like barcoding and other things to track devices, RFID, etc., which are being used at a different level by almost all providers. And depending on which of the 12 verticals you are, as Captain Ramanujam said, you will use a different set of technologies going forward. I think the second part of the question is really the fun part. And I think that the logistics sector provides a huge opportunity for startups to be disruptive, to actually provide and find new opportunities. I mean, if you take Swiggy and Zomato, what are they? They're logistics providers, okay? What is, I mean, Ola and, Uber and all actually move people, and they've actually disrupted the whole, thing, and they've started carrying cargo, and they've started carrying this thing. So, depending on your idea and where you want to disrupt, and if you're a startup, you can actually create huge values, and you can actually disrupt the system. Of course, for every startup that has an idea, the 10 other startups should have the same idea, but then it determines which ones actually, executed well and then get a market share. Some will win, some will lose, etc. But this is a great area of opportunity for startups across the value chain, and to disrupt businesses and create value and connect with the customer.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoy. Sanjay, coming to you because the next question is more from the education perspective. But then, yes, this is coming from Suraj Upadhyay, Director, Mumbai Periphery Projects Development Private Limited. His question is, he will be eager to know any kind of scope of skills that needs to be inculcated to the kids at school. And is there any such kind of experiments happening, and what's your thoughts on that?
As I mentioned,
sorry, could you, was it addressed to me or to Captain?
No, it was addressed to you, but I think Captain wants to say something. Captain, yes.
This we have already started doing it in school. And
Okay.
since the word logistics itself flows from the source word of logic, it's very interesting to children, and it should be. We have made this as a part of the curriculum, the logistics literacy program. We are now in dialogue with the Ministry of Education at the CBSE level to include this in the curriculum. I am hopeful that they will agree. And if that is done, I am sure students will take to this whole thing as like fish to water, because it's going to be very interesting, and children would be able to go back home showing some outcomes of what they have learned.
So, Captain, the next question is probably an upstairs, question in continuation to this, which is respect to the upskilling. This is being posted by Ranjit Nair, who is part of Deccan Transcon Leasing Private Limited. The question is, in current era, when logistics has proliferated into various specialized sectors, is there any quantitative approach to upskilling?
Yes, in fact, the government has laid a huge trust on what is called the RPL, for short, recognition of prior learning. And this is a 72-hour bridge program, and by which the candidates, the employees, are trained and brought up to the level and then given a certificate. For example, there are 10 NSQF levels. If a candidate is a warehouse supervisor at level 3, 4, he will be kind of given a training and seen whether he can come up to the level 5. And if he does, then he gets a level 5 certificate. So this is being done. And in fact, most companies are now preferring this because it gives them a clear idea of how their own structure of their human resources.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Chenoy, next question is directed towards you. I'm not able to read out any person's name. It says anonymous attendee. The question is, when the government is looking towards logistics as a certified industry and promote it from the top, even in today's time, government is banking upon industry experts across the country working in various 3PL logistics company. Until government itself promote this sector, there's no point of logistics cost will go down. So he wants to hear your thoughts on that. And one more question that he has posted, like he's trying to compare the India Post to the success story of DHL. He's saying that, is there any thoughts of going on that track for India Post?
So, I think in very simple things, I can't answer for the government of India, right? As far as the Department of Post goes. But if you see, the Department of Post has also got their own courier services, and they have a lot of other things. There is very interesting that even logistics companies could use Department of Post as a delivery arm, etc. But it's for them to actually understand how to do it and what to do. But the government is very clear about logistics. I mean, after many years, there's been a Department of Logistics that's been created, right? It's headed by a special secretary, right? They're looking at a draft policy. They're looking at a lot of other stuff. So logistics is actually one, creating the infrastructure, right? So the whole national infrastructure pipeline of ports, roads, airports, right? Cargo facilities in airlines. You want to go to 17 million tons or 14 million tons or something of cargo by a certain date. You want to increase the number of airports, right? So and similarly, if you look at the point that Captain Ramanujam meant about oxygen, that the whole oxygen logistics initiative was really driven by the government. And you had 2 task forces created by them, and they actually did something. So government is very serious about logistics. They recognize the need to improve logistics. There's a draft logistics policy which is on the anvil. They have regular interactions with industry to see what it could be done. But I think there is nothing preventing the private sector to actually develop their own logistics, the third-party players or whatever it is. I think the government is fully supportive of it going forward, and they will continue to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoy. Sanjay, if I may come to you, there's a question coming in from Mr. Rakesh Goswami. He's had contract experience at Burlington in English, India. His question is with respect to the communication skills. It's more relevant to the sector because a huge number of people represent their organizations to the outside world. without realizing that they're representing logistics, and they're part of logistics and representing their organization that they're working with. So the question is that how much is the need of the soft skill, and so communication skills needs to be imparted to the people who are working in this particular sector, and what are some kind of training modules or knowledge sharing pattern that's getting developed around it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because at two levels. One is, even in a company, when we promote somebody, think about it. Whenever we talk about, hey, let's promote so-and-so XYZ person, we almost invariably do that on the basis of that person's soft skills. We seldom say, let's promote Abhishek, he's so good at Excel, right? It's to do with soft skills, interpersonal skills. We all know that that's what gets us ahead. Number one. Number two, on social media, as far back as 6-7 years ago, people were, when e-commerce was still actually nascent, people were saying, and I won't mention the company's names, don't take an Amazon package from company X, but take it from company Y, because the delivery people from company Y are better than the delivery people from company X. So the soft skills, not the fact that not how he drove his motorbike, but the soft skills of X versus Y was determining who was getting the business. And this is being shared on social media. One of my staff members came up and said, Sanjay, we are pitching to company X and company Y. This is what people are saying on social media. So it's super important. And companies have started to recognize that. And because the e-commerce deliveries are taking off and going to take off exponentially even more, people are going, some of the companies are going to be hiring up to 200,000 delivery people. And those people, you're absolutely right, will be the face. So it's not there, it's very nascent, because we tend to be, oh, did the person make 14 or 18 deliveries in a day? But the maybe 14 deliveries or 16 deliveries plus a smile is better than 18 or 19 deliveries, but you were really grumpy, And that's how you and I rate the Swiggy person when they come to our door, etc. So yes, that is becoming a factor. I think it's an under-recognized factor. We have certain modules on human factors. How are you as a human being? What are your human traits? And how are you influencing the outcome? Were you fatigued? Were you not trained well enough? Did you say yes to your supervisor when you should have said no? Those kinds of things in cargo actually matter, because they can lead to some very expensive mistakes. If somebody at Starbucks has a bad day, I get a bad cup of coffee, which I don't like, but it lasts an hour. In cargo, if you have a bad day, it can have very lasting effects, right? In terms of cost, accidents, even damage to life or machine, etc. So I think it's very important.
Thank you, Sanjay. Captain, probably over to you, coming back to you for the last time. This is a question coming in from Mr. Gauri Shankar and Siva Kumar. He is head HR at Furukawa Minda Electric. Probably his questions are two. One is that sector is still considered as an unorganized sector. So wants to know about your inputs, and probably this sector is having highest number of attrition as well today. So what is your view on that?
See, the thing is, the unorganized is a word which is a little, vague, I would say, because if you say unorganized, are they not getting ESI? Are they not getting Provident Fund? No, there is not the case. They are all getting that, and they are very much a part of an organized workforce. What I would say is they are part of an outsourced workforce. That is what is the right word. An informal workforce. Informal in the sense it may not be exactly a 365 into n number of years. No, it's not that way. It may be a work for 10 months duration. It may be a work for 6 months duration, and so on. So it is what it may be called an informal workforce that we have. And for this, now, what is I would think is if we differentiate it as an informal workforce, it is going to be the order of the day, because if you see the amount of outsourcing in India, it is only 40 to 50%. If you go abroad, it is 75 to 80%. So the way the future is heading is towards more and more in informal workforce. That's what the gig workers are supposed to be. Now the Amazon and Flipkart are calling college students during your off working hours, can you come and do the delivery? So I mean, these kind of nature of work will itself stop being a 9 to 5 activity, It will be as and when there's a requirement. And hence, we need to get adjusted to this kind of a very informal workforce. And once you say that, yes, attrition is because of repeatedly doing the same job. Some people are not for it, but some people may be for it. So we need to find the right person for the right job, and I'm sure the attrition will kind of come down. But attrition is also something, it is like law of natural progression, where the right man for the right job comes in. I would rather put it that way.
Thank you, Captain. Probably the last question for the day, that's coming in from, I think, a common friend between us, Hi Anand. It says, he's asked that during the recruitment camps, can Logistics Skill Council facilitate career in logistics, a banner or a theme like that? Is that something on the cards?
Absolutely. We take part in almost all labor camps. I mean, we have job melas and so on for the government, districts, skill centers and so on. Definitely, we would love to be part of such melas.
Thank you so much, Captain. With this, probably we come to an end for the question and answer rounds. Siddharth, if I can hand it over back to you for the closing remarks and concluding the session, please.
Sure. Thank you. So thank you very much, sir. Would you like to summarize before I just give a brief closure?
I think I did. Probably over to you now.
Sure. So thank you very much, sir. Such an insightful and engaging conversation, and an absolute privilege to hear you all. And thank you very much for taking the time out, and also very well moderated, Mr. Bhutani. Our leaders and I have been hooked till the end, and I've taken home several nuggets from today's conversations. I'm still receiving messages from our members as we speak, and I really wish we had more time. And also thank you to our leaders in the audience for joining in and for always staying till the end and for always sharing excellent questions. Along with our weekly webinars and our publications, we're taking these discussions on our exclusive app, specifically for senior leaders across 6 sectors, which are logistics, healthcare, real estate, e-mobility, energy, and aerospace and defense. We're also adding new features in 14 new sectors this month. So whether you would like to engage with us on our platform, leaders are invited to join us. So thank you again very much for joining in today. We look forward to having more such discussions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.